Welcome to the Dan Sports Tips Barclays Premier League Daily Fantasy Preview Show for this weekend, the 27th of August games. I will be taking a look at everything you need for your daily fantasy games on DraftKings today. I will be looking at goalkeepers, defenders, midfielders and forwards. Obviously the goal is to construct a lineup using our $50,000 budget of a keeper, 2 defenders, 2 midfielders, 2 forwards and a utility player. Points are scored like this. For anyone who hasn't had the opportunity to sign up and play daily fantasy sports with DraftKings yet, I will pop a link in the description of this video. That will enable you to do that today and join in on the fun. Looking at my goalkeepers today, the keeper I've chosen is Kasper Schmeichel of Leicester City for 5,200. I'm not convinced that Swansea are particularly clinical in front of goal. Schmeichel was outstanding the whole of last season for the champions, and he possesses his father's shot-stopping skills. He has excellent clean sheet and win chances in this game, in my opinion, for the full bonus points. And I think it'll be a fairly open game, so I think there's plenty of potential for him to use those shot-stopping abilities and score some save chances as well. Looking at my defenders today, Leighton Baines of Everton for 5,800. Baines is a forward-thinking fullback. He's heavily involved in set pieces for Everton. He is expensive at 5,800, but a forward-thinking defender is worth its weight in gold in daily fantasy. Faced with a Stoke team that's likely missing in most creative outlet in Shaqiri, there is more freedom to support the forward play, gain the valuable attacking points for crosses, while increasing the upside of clean sheet potential as Stoke, I think, could struggle to create much in this game against Everton as well. Nacho Monreal of Arsenal for 5,100. Arsenal are likely to have more than their fair share of possession against a Watford side that was soundly beaten in 2 of the 3 meetings between the sides last year. New manager Walter Mazzarri for Watford. I mean, those of you that haven't watched before will not know that I'm a Watford fan. Regular viewers will know that. Mazzarri likes to deploy 3 at the back, which places pressure on the wide midfield players defensively, the wing-backs. On the left-hand side is Holebas. He's a competent defender who, when he was playing for Roma 2 seasons ago, was on the Serie A team of the season that year and kept Ashley Cole from regular playing time. I think he'll be able to keep Hector Bellerin in check somewhat down Arsenal's right-hand side. And I think Bellerin will probably be in more lineups today as well. Whoever Watford put on the right side, possibly Nyom, or in portions of the game with Chelsea last week, it almost appeared like Guedioura was playing that role, is going to be far less defensively proficient in comparison to Holebas, and I think it's down their left-hand side where Arsenal are likely to have more success. That makes Monreal a far better option down the left-hand side and potentially a good upside play as an attacking fullback today, and I think 5,100 Monreal should be in your lineups. Branislav Ivanovic of Chelsea, 5,100, the same price as Monreal. He's always liked to go forward, and this has almost increased in the 2 games we've seen under Antonio Conte this year. He had 7 crosses last week. He now averages 8.5 fantasy points per game. And in a game that Chelsea should be dominating possession-wise against Burnley, he will be afforded more licence to go forward. I think he offers huge upside today and is arguably the top defender on the slate today. And Andrew Robertson of Hull for 4,100. I keep using the phrase he's the best defender you haven't heard of, but he's getting noticed already, so I won't be able to say that very much longer. He's had solid performances in back-to-back games against reigning champions Leicester and Swansea. He scores solid defensive points, and that's the key. He's going to likely be afforded that opportunity today against Manchester United in a game that the Red Devils should dominate. I wouldn't bank on a lot going forward from Robertson this week, but I would imagine he'll have plenty of opportunity to increase on the 2 tackles and 4 interceptions last week, and maybe to exceed his 7-point haul, which is where he seems to have found his niche and been sitting through the first couple of weeks of the season. Plethora of midfield options today. Eden Hazard of Chelsea for 8,600. He's run the show for Chelsea this year. He regained his form, you would say, at the Euros in the summer. He looked dangerous against Watford all last week in a game that Watford were ultimately unlucky to lose. If you disagree with me, Chelsea fans, you're lying. He qualifies as both a midfielder and a forward today. He's averaged over 16 points per game through 2 games of the season. In a home game against Burnley, Chelsea should be expected to dominate the game from start to finish. Despite victory against Liverpool last week, Burnley were dominated in all of the stats, including shots. More of the same can be expected today, and with Hazard dictating the play, I think for 8,600 he's a must in all your lineups. Ross Barkley of Everton for 7,800 is key to all of Everton's forward play in behind the front line and firing shots in from range. He's often instrumental in link-up play as well into the box. He offers potential for points from crosses, nailing a screamer from outside the box, and assists. Thus, he's a steal at 7,800. particularly in a game against Stoke, that I think Everton are going to have the lion's share of possession. Anthony Martial of Man United for 7,300 has been heavily involved in United's forward play through the first 2 games. He can be deployed as a midfielder or a forward in your lineups today. He assisted 2 of the goals in the opening day 3-1 win against Bournemouth. United should have plenty of possession and therefore plenty of opportunity for the forward-thinking players to accumulate points against Hull, and he does look relatively cheap at 7,300 in all honesty today. Andros Townsend of Crystal Palace for 7,100. He's been critical to what Palace have done going forward. Both he and Zaha are heavily involved down the wings. The addition of a big number 9 in Christian Benteke can only assist them, as they will now have a target to aim at in the box. Townsend is still a reasonable price after 2 solid games against Spurs and West Brom. While I'm not sure I fancy Palace to win the game against Bournemouth today, I think there is every chance it will be an open game, and attacking players for both sides should have some freedom to play their game today. Roberto Pereira of Watford for 6,400. This is maybe a little bit of me being a homer. I do believe Pereira will slot straight into the starting lineup for the game against Arsenal. He's likely the missing link for Watford, who have finally managed to acquire a legitimate number 10, a link the midfield and the forwards. Pereira can chip in with goals as he gets forward this year. The Argentine does come in with a classy reputation. He's relatively cheap against an Arsenal side who are more solid defensively with Koscielny there, but they're still suspect at the back because they don't really have, Mertesacker looks gone, Gabriel's doesn't look to have the quality for the Premier League, so the second centre-back does create weakness. Pereira can provide for a pretty lethal duo up top in terms of Dini and Igalo, and I think there's certainly at 6,400 he's worth a flyer, an upside gamble. He's a contrarian player. I don't think he'll be in a lot of lineups today. Nathan Redmond of Southampton is 5,400. Played all 180 minutes for the Saints so far this year. Very tricky in their season opener against Watford, including bagging the equaliser that day. Understandably quieter against Manchester United last week. Today's fixture against Sunderland is a sort in which I would expect he will thrive. The white man does offer you multiple routes to score points. He can be used as a midfielder or a forward in your lineups, and it's a cheap price that does enable you to pay up elsewhere for other players. And Nordin Amrabat of Watford for 4,000. Granted, Watford are not expected to dominate against Arsenal today, but Amrabat has had an excellent start to the season after he failed to settle after joining the club in the January transfer window. He did achieve 13 points against Chelsea last week, so, I think Chelsea are better defensively than Arsenal are, to be perfectly brutally honest about it. He looked really dangerous down the right hand side. Virtually everything good Watford did came from that side. It's a punt, but at 4,000 it's one you can afford to make, and he can be deployed as a midfielder or a forward as well. Looking at the forwards today, there are 3 I'm probably going to be looking to get into my lineups. Zlatan Ibrahimovic of Manchester United for 9,600 is one of the more expensive options, but with his form through the first 2 games of this season, how can you not include Zlatan for a tie against Hull City? He has 3 goals in 2 games and has added some much needed swagger to this United team that was lacking it last year. Speaking of swagger, Diego Costa of Chelsea for 8,700. This is a reasonable price for a player that love, or more likely hate him, has produced goals that have scored the winner in each of Chelsea's first 2 games, and now he gets to take on newly promoted Burnley. Chelsea should have too much class for a Burnley team that, as I say, are fairly new to the Premier League. That being said, the Burnley backline and goalkeeper Tom Heaton are good, so I don't think this will be the walkover that many would envisage. Costa, however, is still well worth consideration, and for exactly the same reasons pertaining to game flow, and with rumours out there that after 2 solid performances from the bench, Antonio Conte may go 2 up top and start. I'm going to try not to butcher his name, but the other forward I would use today is Michy Batshuayi. That's probably way out. 7,100 for Chelsea. Those are the players that I'll be looking to get into my lineup today. Let me know in the comments section what you think is going to happen in the Premier League this weekend, who you're going to be using in your lineups. Best of luck with your lineups on DraftKings. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to my channel. I'm here every week. Best of luck with your lineups. I'll be back next week. See you later.